Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions, and other strange events from both a believing and a skeptical perspective, whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Okay, so hello Neil and hello listeners.
Hello.
Sorry,
you'll get a reply from me. You won't get a reply from the listeners.
I hope not. No, we love getting replies from listeners.
No, but not an immediate reply. You'll get an immediate hello from me and
absolutely.
A written reply
later
from maybe some listeners.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That would be nice. So I just wanted to talk to you quickly, both you, Neil, and our listeners, as a kind of follow-up to the experience that I had a few weeks ago now.
You're haunting.
My perceived extraterrestrial encounter. If anybody's listening to this and you haven't listened to this before, or you haven't heard about this before, there'll be links below. Go and listen to what happened to me, what I perceived happened to me. Then go listen to the second thing that'll be linked, which is our discussion with Ben Stevenson from Central Utah Paranormal, where we go into details about it, and Ben gives me some good tips. So this is a couple of weeks after our discussion with Ben. And I've had some real thoughts and insight. Now, the first thing I have to say, caveating this, I haven't yet done the video or audio recording for Ben as I said I would. Really, things have just been getting away from me a bit lately.
You haven't done your homework, is what you. This is a holding recording.
It possibly isn't, and I'll see what you think about this, Neil. So I've obviously it's played on my mind ever since, but I had a bit of an epiphany a few days ago where I was sort of thinking about it, and I remembered back to a book I read some time ago that I've gone back and reread a few times. It was written by a psychotherapist about various cases from patients of his. It's the book, if you want to read it, listeners. I do recommend you do. It's called The Examined Life by a guy called Stephen Grosh. It's a brilliant book, but in there he talks very specifically about one particular case where he had a patient who would go away and work for 10 days, 2 weeks at a time, then come back to her flat. And she would always have this fantasy where she'd put the key in the lock of her door to the flat, and then she'd have this fantasy that somebody, while she's been away, has broken in and rigged up some sort of explosive device to the lock, so that as she turns the key, it triggers this device. This massive explosion goes off, destroying the flat, killing her outright. And she kept having this recurring sort of fantasy about that. Now, obviously, it talks about it in more depth in the book, but ultimately, what that fantasy was doing for her was protecting her from the sort of the stark reality that she was a very lonely person. She lived alone. I mean, she had friends, she had family, but she lived alone. And whilst and she was feeling an intense loneliness. So what this fantasy did basically was it played out in her head that somebody was thinking about her while she wasn't around. Somebody was going to lengths involving her, and does that you're looking at me very bewildered.
Okay,
I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah, I'm trying to make the connection here between being lonely and then imagining that you have the opposite of an admirer, someone who actually wants you dead. Because I can see, I mean, having been in the military at a time when our main conflict was in Northern Ireland, and we were always on the lookout. And if you'd parked your car somewhere, you'd check it for, you check underneath before you got into it, and hope that whatever might have been planted there was visible, that they hadn't somehow rigged something that you wouldn't see, that there'd be something, ready for you to roll your wheel over and set it off, or really obviously under the driver's seat. And it was particularly so in Germany, because they warned us that the IRA, when British soldiers went on tour to Northern Ireland, they would be living in a fortress, and whenever they went out, they would be armed and armoured. They'd be in armoured vehicles, body armour, weapons and such. Whereas us poor bastards on the rear party, we'd be sat there in some barely defended camp. And also, we had cars they didn't have German registration plates. They had British Forces Germany registration plates that were that really stood out. I mean, German number plates were white. Dutch number plates, when Holland was nearby, are yellow. Belgian number plates are white with red lettering. Ours were black with white lettering. My registration was Papa Bravo 207. It really stands out, so anyone could spot it. So it really was. You always had that feeling in the back of your mind that someone was going to set a trap for you, and even if you watched a movie and you've seen that someone is walking into this trap, you see it in every detail. Close up on the key going into the lock and turning, and then
that's
bang, if that particularly horrifies you, I can see how that can be on your mind. It can.
Well, partly. So, I mean, obviously, you're talking about the reality here, whereas for this woman was complete fantasy. And probably just from stuff she'd seen on the movies. But what this fantasy did, it saved her effectively. The concept that nobody thought about her, nobody was thinking about her at all, was harder for her, but pretty much on an unconscious level or emotionally, than this fantasy, as horrific as that fantasy is, because at least that way somebody's thinking about her.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's not an uncommon thing. People, like when they're in the shower, have fantasies like Psycho, but being there's or they'll fantasize that there's a stranger hiding in their house somewhere,
and all it takes is a breeze to blow a door shut, and you think, oh shit, here they come.
Exactly. So and that's what kind of happens. That now tie that in. So I remembered that particular story that sort of stood out in my mind. Tie that in with. There was a friend who I'd not spoken to for probably a couple of months, messaged me out of the blue on Facebook Messenger and said, "Oh, how are you doing?" And I was really surprised. And I even commented, "I'm like really surprised to hear from you," And when she said, like, "Why are you surprised?" I'm like, and I just said it really casual, really didn't think about what I was saying, but I said, well, I don't expect anybody to think about me when I'm not in direct contact with them.
That you really are out of sight, out of mind.
And that is my perception. So I mean, you'll know, Neil, I've been single for just over a year now, since my last relationship broke up. And I think so. I'm really sharing here.
You really are,
listeners.
sharing.
I hope you don't go too hard on me for this. But yeah, so it made me realize that even without being aware of it, I've been experiencing some profound loneliness. Now I have a fantastic circle of friends around me. Obviously, Neil, you're part of that. I'm in contact with people a lot, but ultimately when I'm here on the flat, the computer's switched off, that's it. It's just me. There's no, and that's quite a lonely feeling. I'm not used to having been in the relationship where we would be in contact every day, even if we didn't see each other. You know that someone is always thinking of you, and that has been stripped away from me for the last year. So I put that all together, and I also thought about what you had said about the experience with the infrared, and when your eyesight goes from color to black and white, and it makes sense of shapes. And I put all this together, and I thought, well, yeah, I can see myself sort of imagining a shape in the screen, and then my brain, my unconscious brain, sort of really latching onto that and saying, well, that would mean that, you're not actually alone, because, there's these entities here and they might be visiting you regularly, like really obviously putting the absolute fear of God into me, but at the same time, diverting itself away from the loneliness aspect.
Yeah, so not only are people thinking about you, but people on other planets are thinking about you.
Kind of. But also in a way that, well, I wouldn't be able to see them. So not being able to see them doesn't mean they're absent.
No.
And things like that. So I ran this sort of theory past my therapist. I go to therapy once a week, generally for self-improvement stuff. But I ran this past her, and yeah, she can. Therapists are famously non-committal, but she could certainly see merit in the idea.
So did she just kind of go, interesting?
No, she's actually much more communicative than that.
Have you?
I've got really good therapists.
In all your studies of extra.
Could you?
Oh, we got an
Sorry,
incident.
my watch suddenly started talking.
In all your studies of extraterrestrials, have you come across this phenomenon where an alien grey might only be visible in infrared? That they actually have some power of invisibility and can only and will manifest themselves to you when they feel like it, or by whatever means, or maybe by accident that they've gone into kind of infrared only mode and oh shit, he's just switched on an infrared camera.
Not specifically infrared. So yes to the whole stealth technology, only being visible if they want to be seen. I've heard that applying to both the craft and the individual aliens
because I'm thinking of this feeding into what you think you saw, that there's this background knowledge, if you like.
Yeah, I've never heard anything specific with infrared. No, nothing's coming to mind. But I don't think the unconscious would kind of work that specifically anyway. It would more kind of, here's a fantasy, right, we'll latch onto that fantasy and sort of build it up in your head. And yeah.
I tell you one that it reminded me of, in horror films where someone goes into the bathroom and above they're washing their face in the sink or whatever, above the sink, there's a cupboard with a mirrored door, and they open that cupboard and they're doing whatever. And then when they shut the cupboard again, you see there's someone right behind them.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, that is one of those things that can play on your mind. Or like someone suddenly pops up in the back seat of your car when you're driving along. That you can suddenly, you look in the wing mirror or the rear view mirror, and suddenly you see something that you mistake for a person in the back seat. That you can have those moments.
I can tell you, I have experienced that, actually not for maybe 20, 30 years, but I have experienced that, and it freaked me out terribly. That I don't think it was that I saw someone, but it kind of almost like I sensed a presence. And yeah, it really did. But I remember being very, very tired at the time. But then, yeah, tiredness probably plays a part in this as well. Overactive imagination, and I do have, as I think as many of us as actors do, I do have a good vivid imagination. So that's my current working theory as to what that event was.
Oh, that's yeah.
Is disappointed,
no,
Neil?
it just sounds a bit sad.
Well, I mean, yeah. I get what you're saying there. But no. So I was in two minds about whether or not I should be sharing this with listeners, because the nature of our podcast and the nature of me is, as a believer that we are being visited by extraterrestrials. It almost, I won't say debunks, but it almost does a disservice to the believing community. And to be fair, I have not ruled out, I'm not saying I know I wasn't visited. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is my current working theory about it. I do still intend to do video and audio recording for Ben to analyse. And Ben, going to send this recording to Ben as well. We need to give a shout out to Ben Stevenson. He's just currently launching season 2 of the Overtime Alien podcast. So so go and give that a
shout out to Ben.
Listeners. Shout out to Ben. So I'll send Ben a copy of this to get his thoughts on it as well. Because I wonder if he's experienced similar with like hauntings and things like that. Because I can see it as a psychological trait for people who are particularly lonely to have these fantasies that their imagination, their subconscious sort of feeds on.
I think we all at some level are willing to suspend, even if you don't believe in the supernatural, we're all at some point willing to suspend that disbelief. I've never known anyone who was so disbelieving that, for instance, they couldn't enjoy a horror film or a suspense thriller, that they just sit there watching and say, well, this is bollocks, this could never happen, there's no such thing, whatever. No, you buy into it and you enjoy. That's how you enjoy the story. It's the thrill of being scared, the adrenaline rushes. Apparently it's very good for you. But if you were
in small doses,
but if you were incapable of, because it's catharsis, isn't there? You get the fright and then you get the release. When you come out the cinema, it was just a movie. But while you're in there, you're experiencing emotions, real emotions, and so to some extent, it's good for you. And some people, of course, will take that away with them. It'll play on their mind enough that they'll suddenly see something behind them. Think, oh shit, it's the thing come to get me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you say you come out of the cinema and you fight. So again, just to give a bit of perspective against my situation, even though we are now, what is it, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, something like that.
I can't remember. I lost track.
A long time ago. I'd lost track myself, but still at night now, and it's particularly at night. I think that the sort of the loneliness affects me most. Still at night, when I switch the lights off and I'm like settling down to go to sleep, I still get quite uncomfortable quite often. It's still affecting me to this day, that experience. Nowhere near as much as it was. It's lessening over time, but the effects are still there. So anyway, I thought I wanted.
Yeah, good. So I mean, just to complete the circle and closure, have you tried your camera out again since? Have you put the infrared on and had a look around?
Well, only when I used it on camera with yourself and Ben.
Okay,
that was the only time. But to be honest, I've not really had time. I mean, this is why I've not done the recording. It's not out of fear or anything like that. It's just simply, just like I've been really busy. I've been doing lots of film shoots and working away and stuff like that.
It's good to be busy.
It really is good to be busy, but it's also, it's getting in the way. So I absolutely promise I will be doing that recording at some point.
Yeah, and for the benefit of our listeners, Stu is still single and available at the time of recording.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. But not desperate. I don't want, No, do you know what? I'm going to cut that because that sounds like I was saying I need to be desperate. I'm still very picky.
You don't think we should combine this podcast with a dating app? No,
alienharmony.com.
Yeah, is that got legs? You want
UFO dating?
Yeah, you want to date people with a similar interest in the paranormal. You want to go to places where you want to go crop circling or go to a haunted house or something with a new date. I think we're onto something here, mate.
Yeah, we are. Right. Okay. So this time next year, Rodney, we shall be millionaires.
Monch too.
But do you know what, listeners? I mean, I sincerely hope you appreciate me being this open on the podcast and putting my very, very personal sort of psychological things out there. I really want to hear what everyone thinks. Do message us the usual ways. You can, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment below. If you're, and by the way, do like and subscribe as well. That'd be appreciated. So leave us a comment below. You can contact us on Facebook, on Twitter, by searching Aliens Explored. We have our exclusive Discord server for our Patreon members. So go to patreon.com/Aliens Explored. Pick a tier that suits you and support us that way, and you get exclusive access to that server. You can contact us that way. Or there's good old email, aliensexplored@gmail.com.
Which tier can I expect to find true love?
Yes. Well, we'll see. And yes, if there are any nice ladies out there who who've lowered your expectations in life and are in the UK,
low self-esteem, and an interest in the paranormal.
I was, and I have to say, listeners, it was as a joke, right? So please don't read any more into this. But I did want to say that my ideal woman was someone with very low self-esteem and daddy issues. But there we go. Right. Anyway, yes, join us for future episodes. I don't know when this one will be going out. Fairly soon, one hopes.
Yeah, let's put it straight out. It's not in sequence.
Absolutely. So there we go. We'll speak to you again, listeners. Have a very good one, and keep watching the skies.
Knock it out fast and f*** off early. Yeah, I'll catch you later. Bye.
Aliens Explored is a Figo Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit aliensexplored.com.